Welcome to the Manufacturing Masters Podcast with your host, Allison DeFord.
Everybody, you're in for a real treat today. We have not only a guest, but a maven of manufacturing, that is. Join me in a courageous conversation with the one, the only Meaghan Ziemba. You know her as the owner, copywriter, and editor of Zinc Solutions. She's also the chief marketing officer for 38th Street Studios. She is the hostess with the mostess of the Mavens of Manufacturing podcast. You've got to catch that and subscribe if you don't already. You can also get a hold of Meaghan at mavensofmanufacturing.com if you want to schedule a time to chat with her, to meet with her, and otherwise get to know her on LinkedIn. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that she is also an expert on the Manufacturing Masters podcast. I can't even talk today. So buckle up. We're going to have a deep dive into the impact of rising together and supporting and mentoring females in the skilled trades. And we're going to talk about what success looks like. We're going to talk a little bit about culture, retention, transparency, and the bazinga question at the end that stumps Meaghan for all of 2 seconds. And her answer is, it's pretty cool. You'll get a lot out of it. So thanks for joining me on this episode of Manufacturing Masters Podcast. Here we grow. Today is a super cool guest. I know many of you already know her, but Meaghan, welcome to Manufacturing Masters Podcast.
Thank you, Allison. I'm super excited about this.
Well, we're going to dive right in because I'm pretty sure you and I could do an ongoing podcast that lasted for approximately a week. So
yeah,
today we're going to keep it short and sweet, and we're going to talk about one point. And it's something that I know you are incredibly passionate about. I think you eat breakfast cereal called Mavens. But today we want to talk about rising together and the importance of female mentorship and support in the skilled trades. Do you feel like that's something you could talk about for 15 or 20 minutes?
Yeah, I could talk about it forever. We might not have enough time, but yeah, I can squeeze some of it in for that time.
Well, my first question was really, when we talk about rising together, who is rising together? Do you feel like it's men and women, us and companies?
Yeah, so we have this skills gap, and a lot of people are going to change their mind on what to actually call it, but everybody knows about the Deloitte study that came out, and there's going to be 2.1 million jobs approximately available over the next 10 to 20 years. I think they said 2030, to be more specific. And everybody's complaining about it and talking about it. And myself and a few others are just like, well, what are we going to actually do about it? Like, how do we get awareness built? How do we upskill the current generation? Because we can't forget about the baby boomers and the millennials and Gen X either. Like, we have to remember that all of us make up this wonderful sector. So it's going to actually take all of us rising together. And the reason why I'm so passionate about the women's side of things is because we make up 50% of the workforce. But when it comes to manufacturing and engineering, we're around 30%. So we can definitely improve those numbers. And in order to do that, we need to all come together as a team and figure out how to get the next generation of girls specifically really excited about engineering and manufacturing, because traditionally in our society, it's not something we encourage them to do. And I'm seeing some great changes in that. And there's a lot of programs and organizations now that are really honing in on women specifically. And we just need to keep going with that momentum. So we need all the guys, we need all the companies, we need all the community members, the teachers, the MEPs, we need all the government leadership. We all have to get on the same train and fix this problem, because if we don't work together, then it's never going to get fixed. And we're going to have a huge negative security threat on our hands if we don't bring up manufacturing like we had it back in the 40s.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. Uh, two follow-up questions to that. Number one, for everybody listening, because most of our listeners are manufacturers or they work for a manufacturer, so this is important to them too. How do we do this? Now that's a big broad question, so I'll drill down.
Yes.
How do we do it? And I would say, how do I want to, like, I know I don't want to say where do we start. I know we already have started. Let's say I'm a manufacturer listening to this and I own a company. So this is actually the second part of my how question. And I know you have some videos about this on the Manufacturing Masters platform that are excellent. How do we become a manufacturing company that attracts more women? Are there any?
So you really have to, yeah. So companies, because our sector has been traditionally male dominated for so many years. There's a certain culture, right, that has come along with that. And sometimes it's a good old boys club culture. So you really have to take a look at your work environment and see if there's anything that might um, kind of turn off women from applying to your company. So do you have a work environment where there's going to be a lot of like locker room talk, because you don't want that to happen. You want to get rid of that. The other thing is the women that are working at your company, what are you doing to support them and invest in them so that when they do move up the ladder, they're going to become an advocate for your company? What are you doing to retain them? I just read a report. What I've started reading it off of LinkedIn, where a lot of women leadership are actually leaving the companies that they're not happy at. And you got to start asking yourself, okay, why are they leaving? What's, kind of persuading them to go somewhere else? And it really makes you think about, traditionally how work has been done. So now there's a lot of demand for flex work hours, incentives around, continuous learning, incentives around childcare, incentives around joining other organizations where women can feel comfortable venting to one another and talking with one another and exchanging ideas. You have to kind of look at all of that at big picture. The other thing is too, is if you're writing job ads, what are your job ads including? Is it including more masculine language versus feminine language? Is it including a bunch of responsibilities that you don't necessarily need to have on there? Women who look at a job ad, we tend to apply only to the jobs that we feel 100% qualified for, where versus men, if they're only, feeling like 60% I'm qualified for this, I'm still going to go for it because that's the competitive edge that they have. So how can you include more collaborative language in your job ad and taking some of that, gender specific language out and make it more neutral? And women like to focus on collaborative work environments. They love relationship building. So if you could put some of that information in there and maybe just focus on the absolute must-haves, where you're not listing like 8 or 10 things that you need to be qualified for. So for instance, do they really need to know 2 or 3 languages? And that's including like the languages we speak, but also the coding languages.
Right.
Do they really need to have 4 or 5 years of experience? Is there training opportunities available? If so, put that in your job ad. Say, okay, you might not be qualified, but we offer ongoing training for you. The other big thing, put your salary range on there. Put it on there, because a lot of times women won't apply for jobs if they don't see that salary range, because the whole pay equity argument that's going on right now. We want to know that we're getting paid the same amount as any male candidate that could be up for the same position. We want to know that you're focusing on our skill set. So there's a ton of different things that you can do to get women excited and come into your company. And the other thing is you have to make sure you follow through. So whatever expectations you're creating, make sure that you're voicing those expectations to your other employees, because if you have one bad apple, in the group, that could ruin it for everyone. And it really does start from the leadership. If the leadership doesn't follow through with the core values, you can't guarantee that the rest of the workforce is going to. So if you're going to change your culture, you got to be serious about it. You have to commit to it. And any bad apple, you either have to, have a talk with them or get rid of them, because it will just make things harder for you in the long run.
Exactly. So what we can take away from this is the how-to would be culture, incredibly important, retention and focus on that, because like you said, there are a lot of women in senior leadership roles who are leaving. So it's important to figure out why and fix that, because it's way more expensive to hire someone new than to promote from within, right? And train from within. The third thing you mentioned are job ads. So the language that we're using. And then fourth, being transparent with salary ranges and with expectations. And one thing I've learned, and I don't know if you've heard this theory or experienced it, but the difference between expectations and agreements is massive. So if companies would, instead of, these are my expectations of you, it's, we'd like to create an agreement. I mean, if it's effectively the expectations, but an agreement means we expect this, you understand it, we both agree. So we're on the same page. And that way, because expectations for the most part, they don't get met. And then the person that doesn't meet them fails or feels like a failure.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a good point too, because the other thing is not everybody wants certain positions. Like some are happy where they're at. And just because they're really good at what they do, it doesn't necessarily mean that they want to be in a leadership position either. They might just want to stay where they're at. And if you offer extra training so that they can keep developing their skill set in that specific area, that might be an option for them. So really make sure too, when you're promoting within, that you're getting the right candidates to fill those seats, because not everybody wants to fill specific seats. They like the seat that they're sitting in. So those ongoing conversations and, that's going to be vital. So I definitely agree with your point on that, where, you're saying what your expectations are and you come to an agreement with it.
And you bring up a great point too, to have, because I know a lot of small manufacturers, maybe they don't necessarily have a career path mapped out where they've thought about that. So that's an important thing I think people could take away from what you just said, is by instilling some kind of career trajectory or career path. And when somebody comes in, show them, here's what that looks like. Here's what that could look like. Because I know salespeople in companies, and female in particular, and she told a female recently, she said, oh, my goal is to be the CEO of the company. And I am on that career path because she's been in conversation with the CEO for a long time now, knowing it's not happening tomorrow, but that's what she's working towards. So there's no mistake. Right. So I think you're right. Those conversations need to be continuous, but maybe having a defined, career path for people so they can see this is what's possible if this is what you're interested in. And I need to know now, or in a year from now, are you still on this path with me, or have you decided you're happy where you are?
And that's where those performance reviews really come in play too. Because I think we've all experienced the bad performance reviews where, they just say a bunch of stuff and they don't really explain it. It's not really a conversation. So we really need to do a better job at having those conversations during that time as well too, because, it's not all about the good and it's not all about the bad. Like there should be room for constructive criticism and suggestions of improvement, or here's a different path that you can take because you are doing so well. So having those regular performance views should all have that in that conversation so that they know they're either on the right path or they want to do something else or just stick with what they're doing.
Yes. And, I actually have a client, and I would consider myself a fan of this man. He's he owns a manufacturing company in Utah, and his philosophy is to give people the freedom to fail.
I love that.
Yeah. And he talks to them about it constantly. It's like, look, we're agreeing, right, that maybe this is a goal or a KPI that you're going to work on. I'm giving you room or permission to fail, because at least the point is that we're going to try this.
Yeah.
Right. And confidence doesn't come from feeling confident. I just heard Mel Robbins talk about this. Confidence is not a feeling. Confidence is daring to try in the first place.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. And then the feeling of confidence comes from practice. It comes from that doing. So if we give people a little bit of room,
Right.
for error, or to like, hey, go try this. It may not turn out the way we're both planning, and I'm going to be okay with that, but this is our goal. Just to give people that permission. I see it in his company has just made, I mean, they rarely fail because they feel like they have some freedom.
That's awesome. And I think you bring up a really good point too, especially when it involves women, because I think a lot of us try to be perfectionists and we get so anxious about failing because we don't want to disappoint anyone or let anyone down. So empower, I just had a conversation with someone from Poland about this. Empowerment is such a huge thing. And I think it's very important for any manufacturing leader to think about ways how they can empower not just the women in their workforce, but also the other employees, because it should really be part of their strategy. And that gentleman that you were talking about, allowing his employees to know, hey, if you fail, that's fine.
Right.
We'll work it out. That's so empowering. And what that does is it allows for more innovation and problem solving. It allows for quicker decision making, because employers are going to be like, okay, he trusts me enough to fail, but he also trusts me enough to like know that I'm going to come to him if I can't figure it out, and then we can come up with something together, and I'll be able to make a decision faster because they're not going to hang around waiting to, try to decide if they need help or not. They're going to be able to make quicker decisions, and it just allows for more creativity. When you feel trusted, you tend to do more creative and more risk taking, and that just builds up motivation and it makes employees more productive. So I think the key term that a lot of leaders need to keep in mind is empowerment, because when you allow people to just do something and trust that they're going to do the right thing, that really can help increase productivity, and it's just better for your overall bottom line.
Absolutely. And this same gentleman, he also, his core value, I guess this would be the right way to say it, but he lives to empower the human spirit with every employee that he has. And you can see it when you walk on the shop floor. You can see it when he walks by. You've been in those organizations where, the owner suddenly appears, isn't always there, isn't always down on the floor, walks by, and you can watch people's body language. They either tense up or they go, hey, relaxed shoulders, a wave, a handshake. Hey, how's it going? How's your wife? He knows them. He knows what's happening. Or like, hey, how are your kids? It's and again, I think that comes back to culture and leadership, but
yeah, I would love to know who that gentleman is. So when we go offline, because I love taking facility tours too. And I know people that are like trying to find companies to work with that are like that, because they understand if you have happy employees, they're going to be more productive. And just that relationship building too, that he's building with his employees, that I'm sure he does the same thing with the customers that he has. So he has a bunch of repeat customers. So that customers want to work with people they trust and that really care about them. Because right now we've been seeing the shift, but there is the shift happening where that trusting relationship is so important. People don't want to be pitched anymore because they can go online and look up stuff themselves. They want those relationships. They want those quote unquote friendships. But they want you to ask about their family, and they want you to ask about their kids or what's going on, because it just means that you care about them and you don't want to let them down. So they know they're going to get the best product from you, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So I think that's awesome. I would love to meet him.
Well, I will tell you, his name is Brad Robeson, and the company is
Oh,
called Clean Machine. Hold on just a
that's
minute.
awesome.
Speaking of Chris Fox, we were just talking about him. He was trying to give me a
He
call.
heard us.
Yeah, thank you, universe. Yeah, Clean Machine. They're in West Jordan, Utah, and he's just really taught me a lot. And I think he's a wonderful example
awesome.
of the kind of manufacturer that we're talking about, or
Yep.
maybe something, a goal of how you want to be. And so I wanted to ask you quickly, because we're gonna have to wrap up here soon, and I'm sad. What does success look like? Or is there a success story that you'd like to share? Where you think,
I think success. Are you talking about me personally or for manufacturers?
I feel like for manufacturers and this whole mentoring and supporting women and really elevating.
So I think success, it's not just about the profit that you're making in the end. That's one way you can define success, but I think the most successful brands are the ones that everybody talks about in a positive way. Yes, there are brands that get talked about in a negative way, but I think the brands where people just light up when they talk about them because they have that emotional connection with them.
Right.
I think that's really successful. And I like companies where when I talk to women, they brag about being a part of that company, because we've had to deal with so much over the years. And I wasn't by any means at the beginning of women in manufacturing. And I guess I'm a millennial. I'm at the cusp of Gen X and millennial, but I know the ones that came before me, they had to deal with a lot worse than I ever had to deal with. And for any of that generation to really talk positively about a company that they work for, I think that's a success, because it's been a long time coming, I think, for a change to happen with women in this sector. And I see it, and it wouldn't have been possible, one, without all of the male mentors that have been there encouraging every single one of us, but two, for those women who said, no, I'm going to stick to this sector because it's what I love, I'm passionate about it, and I'm going to be that voice of change. And this company believes in me, and they know I can do it, so I'm going to stick to it. So any of the women from the older generations that talk positively about a company they're with, I think that's successful too, because it's that word of mouth again. Like, you don't talk about people. Well, you talk about people you don't like, but you don't recommend business to anyone if you don't trust that relationship. So I think the positive talk is a sign of sure success. So
I love that. Well, and just a last question. I'm going to throw this at you. So what advice do you think 60-year-old Meaghan would give to current day Meaghan?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a really good question, Allison. I would probably give current day Meaghan, don't believe in imposter syndrome. Because right now that's a key term and I have dealt with it, and I've been thinking about it lately. And the more I think about it, the more I'm telling myself, well, you were really stupid to believe in that, because people are coming to you because they trust you, and it's because of your skill set, and you should believe in yourself, because that's what's going to help you be successful. And if you start doubting yourself and start listening to all of the critics, that's when we start to lag behind. So I would definitely tell my current self not to pay attention to that self-doubt, and then just keep going and enjoying the ride, because it's been fun and I've been having a blast, and I've been meeting a lot of cool people, and the negative comments, they don't matter because people keep coming to me and, asking me questions and wanting to have a conversation. And I have little girls coming up to me that are just so excited to meet me because of what I'm doing. And that just blows my mind because I never expected that to happen. So definitely ignore the imposter syndrome doubts in your mind.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm here to tell you, sister, you are not an imposter. You're doing something that's not necessarily easy. If it was, everybody else would be doing it, and they're not. So I want to thank you. I know everybody listening to this is going to be thinking the same thing when they hear this episode. Like, keep going. You're making a difference, and we need you. So
thank you so much.
I just want to say
that.
thank you, Meaghan, and I'm looking forward to recording many more episodes with you.
Yes, thank you, Allison. I appreciate it.
See you next time.
Bye.
If you're not already, subscribe to the Manufacturing Masters podcast on Apple Music or Spotify. And for a deeper dive, head on over to manufacturing-masters.com. It's everything they never taught you in school.